should be immediately available. I've been uploading things and immediately pulling them into Meet Echo, so that should work.
Oh, it's okay. Here's me thinking I would be clever today. Nonetheless, I can share my screen like I usually do.
Sure.
That's not a problem. In fact, in ways, that's easier. And I mean, we've got a few minutes yet. I'll email. Share screen. There we go. I'll just email people the details about the meeting. Let them know that it's coming in, because we tend to get much more reactive folks. So I guess we'll give folks a couple of minutes.
Right.
Stefan just mailed to the list saying he can't find the link, so he's obviously trying to get there.
James just also emailed out saying with the link, so just completely unrelated. I just keep the link in the Google Calendar event. It doesn't change.
Good evening, Greg.
Hello.
What time is it in New Zealand?
9 p.m.
Okay.
Not bad. Just put the kids to bed.
Right.
I say put them to bed. They're basically teenagers. One is a teenager and the other's 12. I just basically say go to bed.
Yeah. I think we'll give Stefan a minute or two, see if there's anybody else that'll join.
So, James, do you have any newer information from Tim since the mail he sent yesterday?
No, he sent me a message Last night my time, just making sure that I'd be okay by myself, which I should be fine. I mean, you guys are not the rowdiest bunch.
We can be if you want.
I'd rather you not, Carsten. I know you can get up to mischief, but I kind of need your help here today more than anything. So no, I don't have anything additional that he hasn't already told the list.
Got me wondering now, who is the rowdiest bunch? Better not say.
I honestly couldn't tell you, even if I.
It's Jason
Yeah,
Schema.
we're definitely one of the quieter working groups. Yeah, I think a lot of people save their used to save their stuff up for the plenary and other such wider meetings, but yeah. Where is Stefan? Shall we start in the hopes that Stefan sees my email and joins?
Yeah.
Cool. So I should probably get the formalities out of the way then. So for the YouTube recording that will happen no doubt later on today, this is the JSONPath working group meeting for November 2022. As this is an IETF meeting, the usual disclaimers of note well apply here, including conduct, etc. Please note well. I think we'll just go through the usual of what we do here, where at some point I will get around to doing the notes. I think we'll just have to keep a closer eye on any actions that come out of today. Blue sheets are automatic because me, Durko, I'll keep an eye out on the chat because there's only a handful of us. In terms of the agenda bashing, we more or less stick to the same thing that we've been doing for the previous meetings, where we'll go through a bit of a status update on the draft, iRegex, and then cut through any issues. Is there anything particular that anybody else wants to bring up or discuss? No? Okay. Then we should probably just, actually, if there's one thing I want to start with, it's iRegex. Because in the previous meeting, we put out a call for adoption. Sorry, the working group last call, wow, forgive me. So the working group last call went out, and for a couple of reasons, I've stalled it. Normally it would be a 2-week out there just for a fortnight, and then you'd have enough response to get a consensus call. Greg, you raised, one of the questions I have for you is that you raised a particular issue with the use of XSD as the foundation for this, as opposed to using, Carsten, I'm going to stop here.
Yeah, so I think the way we are going to handle this regex issue is by putting the additional functionality we want for JSONPath into the function extension mechanism. So if you have seen the pull request I put in yesterday, number 280, the updates to the pull request I put in yesterday, we now have a match and a search function, and that should address the main issue here. So that's my status. Essentially, we don't have working group last calls on iRegex. We have working group last call comments on how we use iRegex in JSONPath.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to clear out was, does this still working group last call or not? And if the answer is you've put, sorry, I missed that one when looking through the pile of issues in GitHub, etc. Okay, so in terms of, this will obviously mean you're cutting a new, you don't need to cut out a new version of iRegex, is that correct?
Well, unless we have other things to do there. So I think there was one minor item. Oh, hi, Stefan. There was one minor item that needs a change in the text, but that's the usual working group last call processing that we are doing. So I think
Okay.
we could leave this in the stalled state for a bit more time until the pull request 280 settles.
Okay.
So in regard to that issue that I raised with iRegex being based in the XML version of regex, the larger question was not how are we using it in JSONPath. I think the solution of having two functions rather than just the single operator does address the issue with addresses that issue in the context of JSONPath. But my understanding from our meeting months ago when we originally talked about creating another regex standard was that we wanted something that was an intersection of popular and common syntaxes that would act as kind of a interoperable base. And the arguments that I put forth in that issue are that the XML regex is not representative of the larger usage of regex. And I've listed multiple websites that don't have the implicit anchoring, which the XML regex does. Basically, the common usage of regex is not what's represented in that specification. And if that specification is intended for interoperability, it is missing that goal. That is the point of that issue.
Carsten?
Yeah, so the approach we took with iRegex was to actually create exactly that interoperable intersection. And there's no way to do an interoperable intersection with anchors because anchors are not interoperable. So that's one of the reasons we took that out, but also because we are seeing that regular expressions are used in various places where you don't need them to be searching regular expressions. So we have.
Okay, so you've mentioned on the issue as well, in just now, that anchors are not interoperable, but you haven't given any evidence as to why they're not interoperable. There's no evidence to that end listed in the issue.
That's pretty much well known in the regex community. If you look into the iRegex document, there's actually instructions on how to convert iRegex to ECMAScript and other regular expressions. And if you look closely, you will find out that these differ.
I saw those instructions, but there's no evidence. There's no evidence to say why we should prefer implicit anchoring over non-implicit anchoring, over explicit anchoring. There's no. You've presented no evidence as to why you chose the XML version over the many more common and popular syntaxes that are in use today.
Well, again,
if it's going to be interoperable, it needs to be
a subset of all those other syntaxes. So you cannot say that these syntaxes are not in use. iRegex is in use. It's the part of ECMAScript or PCIe and so on that you would want to use. It's just relieved of this anchor issue because those are different between different variants.
Okay, then I would like to see a survey of how they're different between the different implementations, because that's what I haven't seen. And the other person who has commented on this is one of my fellows from JSON Schema, Henry Andrews. He also has not seen evidence to that. And this is the primary reason Henry got involved was because I proposed to JSON Schema that we use this supposed interoperable regex as a replacement for pure ECMAScript, which is not universal. We want to move away from ECMAScript because it is not interoperable. But if we suddenly require implicit anchoring, then it's going to break just about anybody who uses a regex in a JSON schema, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, so I understand that JSON schema cannot make this change because the way that the pattern keyword is used right now is based on explicit anchors. So that's certainly interesting. And one interesting thing one could do is define a way to deal with those explicit anchors as we find them in JSON schema documents today, but that's not work I set out to do. So that is something for the JSON schema people to do, because they have the sensitivities there on stability and so on that I really can't deal with. So I would really prefer if we wouldn't get that JSON schema issue to invade on what we are trying to do here in this working group.
Okay, well, it's to Henry's point. This was your first opportunity to cater to the needs of a potential consumer, and it's not happening. I feel like iRegex has failed on its goal.
Well, if JSON schema is your only yardstick there, that's not something I can help you with.
Okay, I would like to see a survey of why implicit anchoring, or of why anchors cannot be included in this. That's the single piece that I haven't seen yet.
Okay, if you read that part of iRegex that explains how to...
I read that part.
Yeah, so if that is
you're
not
talking
enough
about how it
information,
can be converted from one to another. You're not giving evidence of how, or of why you're not including it in the first place. That's what I'm looking for.
yeah, the reason iRegex doesn't have explicit anchors is that I didn't think that was a useful thing to have in this context. So if you're asking me for my reason, I think iRegex is exactly what we should be doing. But
Okay, so now
also...
you're saying that you didn't add it because you didn't think it was useful. Whereas before you were saying that you didn't add it because it wasn't in the intersection of common specifications. If it's not part of the common specifications, then we need to see evidence of that. If you just don't think it's useful, then maybe reconsider.
Greg, I just told you why I think this is the right thing to do. Now, the reason I can give for people who don't share the view of the world is that there is no interoperable subset, no interoperable intersection that we can work on. And I'm having a hard time doing anything more than writing these sections in iRegex because it's obvious from them. So I really wouldn't know what to add to that.
It may be obvious to you, but it is not obvious to me.
Yeah, and I would
and
need
it's
some
probably
help.
not obvious to other readers.
I would need some help finding out why it's not obvious from those sections.
Glenn,
You
need to
obviously have a greater context of regex than I do.
Which might be the case, but what the sections actually do, they show you how to implement the implicit anchors in ECMAScript, in the ECMAScript dialect, and in the PCIe dialect, and they are different.
But that's not good. But as I mentioned, that doesn't give me the information that I'm looking for.
hang on, Glenn,
Yes, Glenn.
would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm wondering if a way forward is to add a paragraph to our regex, just making the statement that Carsten's been saying, as pointed out in the mappings, the anchoring mechanisms are different between the implementations, and so they weren't included in this interoperable subset. Would that satisfy your concern, Greg?
No, because
No.
what I'm asking for is the evidence that it's different between the different regex mechanisms. A simple survey should be able to serve that, but I don't have the regex knowledge to go do that myself.
But I thought the point was that the at least a partial survey is present in the iRegXP document, and it just needs to be
There's
pointed.
not one.
Okay, well,
I think I'm somewhat in agreement. How much effort would that take?
I mean,
I'm not
writing the
looking for
paragraph.
something like, I'm not looking for go find every regex thing. I'm just saying go find the most common ones and show that anchors are not a common feature, or the way anchors are implemented differ between them.
Yeah,
I
there
only
are
know-
several. There are several web pages that explain regular expressions, and I can certainly go ahead and collect
Yeah, I
points
linked
for
5
those.
of them for you, and they all say the same thing. I just did a Google search on regex testers online and linked the top 5
Yeah.
in that issue, and they all
Okay,
say the same thing.
I'm a bit less interested in regex testers than sites that actually explain what regex are, because the testers are only going to show the dialect that they are actually implementing. And since testers usually run in the browser, they are very likely to be based on the ECMAScript dialect there. So that doesn't really tell me very much.
And to my point, those are going to be the ones that are most common, most familiar to existing developers.
Well, that depends a lot on in what areas you move. Yeah, if we are doing a JavaScript version of JSONPath, then I think I could follow your argument, but we're not.
yeah, and the just looking at the document, section 5.3 mentions the anchors hat and dollar in ECMAScript, and \A and \Z in 3 other implementations: PCRE, RE2, which I'm familiar with, Ruby regex, which I used to be familiar with. So there's a little survey there.
Okay.
And how big a survey do we need?
I don't know. I suppose that does satisfy what I'm asking for, showing common implementations where it doesn't match across them. I don't know.
But specifically what matters is not necessarily the implementation, but the dialect of regex, right?
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you do happen to find another dialect of regular expression that just so happens to behave differently that's relevant to this, then yeah. I think maybe the way out of here is probably if you've got some text that would show that, to include it in the document.
Well, as Glenn pointed out, it's the comparison between 5.3 and 5.4 there.
Yeah.
That shows different dialects that do anchoring differently, and that is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, do you think it's necessary to add text to the regex document pointing this out and just drawing this out, or is it now obvious?
Maybe a comment, I don't know, or maybe just, I think maybe just post in the issue that the comparison exists between sections 5.3 and 5.4, that those two sections show that the anchors are not common between dialects.
Sure, we can do that.
And then that record exists.
Sure, we can definitely include that.
Yeah.
Why not?
The only other thing that was in there was, and I'll answer my own question here. The only other thing that was in there is why we decided to go with XSD when we're building a JSON-based technology. That really didn't make sense to me at all. But as this is and this is the answer part, as this is an independent standard that we are developing, I guess technically independently of JSONPath, even though it's in the JSONPath.org, it doesn't necessarily need to follow the JSON or JavaScript technology stack.
Okay. So with that, is it fair to conclude that once the PR and the JSON path base with the two additional functions is included, that we can conclude this particular issue?
Yeah, I suppose.
Okay. Okay.
I am really sad that this won't work out for JSON schema though. It seemed like a good secondary application for it, aside from JSONPath.
Well, you could still do the work of defining your own extension to iregex that actually supports the patterns, the anchor patterns that you like. So that you could incorporate iregex, but just not directly. But you would have to add a little bit of glue there.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of, okay, so that's fine. I think in terms of next steps, do we have agreement that we'll keep, we can't keep iRegex in working group last call forever. And one of my aims out of this meeting is to get some consensus on when we think that we can submit this to AD to progress on the pipeline towards its final destiny as RFC. Do we have any other work that would prevent that? And if no, what timeline could we have the working group last call conclude? And I leave that as an open question to the floor.
Yeah, my proposal was to finish the work on 280 in JSONPath and really make sure that this can be integrated the way we want,
Okay.
and then go ahead with iregex. So again, there are some minor changes that need to be made, but we will figure that out.
Yeah, but some of those changes can obviously happen in the later phases, and you know how to deal with that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So for the sake of setting a target, is it worth us saying that in a couple of weeks' time, say around the week starting the 5th of December or the subsequent week, that we aim to conclude working group last call, and if there's no objections, move it along? Is that a reasonable timeline, or?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, then let's do that. It would be good if we get some emails to the list of endorsement for it or non-endorsement. Typically in other working groups, and this is more for the not Carsten people in the call, is usually when a working group last call is issued, folks will reply to the email saying, yes, this is ready, or no, it's not, and here's why. In terms of all of you, if you could do that, please, I would be appreciative of it, because I need it as part of document shepherding, and also just showing to the AD that there is working group consensus that the document's ready to progress. So I would like to leave that as a task for the working group to do. Obviously, Carsten can't as author. But for the rest of you, I would appreciate it if you could. Okay. Shall we move on to the next bit, which is JSON path issues and pull requests? Glenn, I noticed in the past, since our last meeting, you've actually done quite a lot of work here. Is there anything particularly that you think would be worth discussing with the working group, or in issues or pull requests?
Let's see. Well, the Stefan's issue, can't quite see the number there. 310 is it, the top one? Maybe worth discussing, because we were going back and forth on the in the issue, and it'd be good to come to consensus on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like us to spend most of the time on 280.
Okay.
So
we could start with 280 and come back to this.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that then. 280. Oh, it's the pull request, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you look at the notepad that comes with the meeting today, I have made 3 headlines here for what we actually need to work to finish this, or what I understand what we need to work on to finish this. So there may be other things, but I think it's pretty clear that we have to work on this node list versus value thing. As Glyn pointed out, we don't actually have a way to put a generalized node list into a function like count at the moment. So the example that is given for count actually doesn't pass, and we need to fix that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is in those places where we actually expect values, what do we do if the singular path that is used to extract this value comes up empty? So we are running into the same problem we have been running into previously, but that so far we have been able to manage, and let's see whether we can manage it here. Essentially, what we have is a situation where what is handed to the function is not JSON value, but it's a JSON value or something that doesn't exist. And we would have to describe this in a way that the individual functions can do something useful with that situation. So, for instance, for match, I think it's pretty clear what to do if the thing that we are trying to match doesn't exist in the first place. But for length, for instance, it's less clear. So that's the second item, and the third item is that there are still a lot of editorial issues. We could say things in a way that is easier to understand, but I think we can do these editorial issues after merging to 80 unless they are really egregious, just like we have been doing, or Glyn actually has been doing editorial fixes on the document in the last few weeks. So I think we can keep working on the editorial issues even when 280 is merged. So those are the three things. Do people see something big that needs to be done about the function extension apart from that?
I think this is really going into the right direction. Many thanks to Carsten to do that introductory work. There are some challenges. We always need to return something senseful from the functions. This is a challenge, and the other is to the function name registry, right? So I'm looking for the length function should return an integer. I've read that it's an unsigned integer, so you need to return. You cannot return -1, which I would prefer. But if you hand over to the length function a value like null, true, or false, you will get a 1 in your last proposal, Carsten. This I don't understand why it's not 0.
Yeah, that definitely can be argued. So I'm seeing one value there. So for me, it's 1. But yeah,
Okay.
handing a non-container non-string to a length function is exactly the kind of problem that we have to deal with. So
Okay.
in programming languages, we could throw errors. Now we currently the idea is that we don't throw errors at runtime. We throw errors at compile time. So we can look at a JSON path query and say whether that's a valid query or not without looking at the data. So we either add data dependent errors, which I think would be And something that we fought hard not to have so far, or we put the error in the data. And of course, doing something that is out of domain, which is not an unsigned integer, which is the only natural result of a length function, is one way to actually return that error as data. And well, I'm not particularly fond of -1. I think we have things like false or undefined or something that are closer to the situation where JSON doesn't have undefined, so we would have to extend the value space. Essentially, most modern programming languages have a construct that is called option, or maybe. These are two popular names for the feature where you can say you have data or you don't have data, and that would be the right thing to do if we were designing a programming language, but we're not doing that. So the question is whether it's still the right thing to do, or we cop out by returning false or something.
I do agree that we should avoid runtime errors at all circumstances. So we should think carefully about what we will return. And these are the first time where those extension points are used. Is this correct? Or are extension points in use anywhere else? So maybe we can learn from these applications of extension points. Do you know from other use of extension points in other specs?
Oh, tons of specs have tons of extension points. They just don't necessarily look the way that this here does. So
we can't reuse some what they have experience with already.
Well, I don't see an analog that we could just drop in and be done with having all these discussions. I think we have to think about the value space a little bit more in a little bit more detail.
Okay, another proposal for a very useful function would be name of or index of or something like that to address the member name, or looking for values with a specific member name. This came up several times in issues, and this would be a very useful extension point. Also, you added some others. I think they are useful. We come to the regex, the two regex functions soon, I think. So would it make sense to add name of or index of or something like that? Name of would be much more useful than index of, I think.
So far, the examples that I have seen actually are trying to use filter expressions in a place where actually we have other JSON path mechanisms that would be better use in this case. So I'm not seeing a particular compelling use case for something like name of yet. The reason we haven't done anything in this space is that we wanted to avoid looking up in the structure of the JSON value that is put into the query. So we currently only have mechanisms to look down and doing a name of or index of a value would look up. Now, this is not something we have to avoid, but it clearly is different from what we have been doing so far.
Yes, sure. We don't want to look up the tree, of course. But if you are iterating over the member values, you get the name, the member name, and if you ask for the value, the member name foo, and you get it, you have a match. It's very easy to implement. So many people don't understand why this isn't possible with JSON paths to ask for a member with a specific name. So it would be a very useful function, I think. What is the opinion of the others?
Well, we already can ask for a member with a given name because I mean that's the what's it called right now? The child selector gives you that capability, so it doesn't have to be part of the filter expression unless the filter expression gives you some additional functionality that you need that cannot be expressed by the normal child segment.
Yes. Of course, you can directly address a member name with a specific name. If I remember the issue correctly, I have in mind it was an expression. Every member name which has not that name and that name, something like that. Yes, of course. But it still has some usefulness, I think.
The way that the filter expressions are set up, it's currently relatively hard to make use of that because the filter expression in the end only gives you a Boolean value, so you cannot really do much with a collection of members that you select based on some criteria. So I think that such an extension would become more useful if we had more functionality where we actually can use the expression language. If we had the way for the expression language to actually create node lists that then can go into additional segments, then I think we would gain much more from such a feature.
Another example which comes to mind may be to look for members with a member name according to a special regular expression. This is another, but you may be right. It's not highest priority, of course not. But I think we should think about it if we want to add 1, 2 more functions. Okay. If not, it's extensible anyway, I hope. And so we if users demand for it, they can extend it by themselves.
Yeah, we haven't really said what these functions can do. Maybe that's actually a pretty important
Yes.
issue. So whether it's actually appropriate to reach up in the tree.
I think we should avoid the necessity to go up in the tree. XML is no problem because the nodes are linked also upward, but in JSON it's not. Applications can do so, I know, but it would be a major hit. I don't see the necessity to go up in the tree.
My point was mainly that we don't have any language that would rule this out. And we probably have to think about providing some guide rails what these functions can do and what they cannot do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like there's still that little bit more to cover out on that. Is there anything else of this issue that you wanted to run through with Carsten?
Yeah, so on the first item, the syntax for node list versus value, I propose to split function argument into a node list argument and a value argument. That split is inconsequential at the end because a function argument will be a choice between the two. But it allows us to actually talk about which things are allowed where. And we would actually have a way of checking without data whether a particular argument is the right one for the function at hand.
Okay.
So that's an extension to the existing PR that I propose to write. And yeah, so we have to work on this dealing with empty singular paths issue, and I don't have a proposal for that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the general comment is if we go for a more restrictive function extension mechanism, like the one that's being proposed at the moment, it could conceivably be extended later in a future spec.
Yes,
So,
we just have to make sure we don't do something stupid that makes it hard to do this extension.
yeah.
So we have to have a rough idea of how such extensions could look like to make sure that we don't interfere with them, I think.
Yeah. So in some senses, so long as the prime examples of extensions that have come up in discussion so far can be addressed, I think we're in good shape. Length was the one that keeps cropping up, but I think one or two others.
Yeah, I put in count mostly so we have an example that actually takes a node list as an argument. I don't think this will be used really heavily. I can imagine some use cases. So it's essentially extending the existing expression beyond just being able to look for at least one. And that is certainly useful.
Yeah. And now we've got the regex match and search functions. That's further proof that the extension mechanism is reasonably powerful.
I think I do have a question with length and count. I got the argument from Carsten that length does not work with a node list, because if the node list has only one, it would automatically take the value of that node in that list. So this was the argument. I can follow this argument to take two functions, count and length. But if we reconsider the discussion about node lists and how they are presented in JSON, it would be an array. So what if we use to detect node lists, if we give an array of nodes or an array of paths, normalized paths, as a single argument? Couldn't we not detect if it is really a node list against if it is to be interpreted as the value of a single node? Wouldn't this be a way out of this discrepancy between node lists and with only one node? Well, where am I wrong?
My response to that would be having something smart in the language that detects what the writer of the query was intending to do is always inferior to the writer of the query actually saying what they were trying to do. Were they trying to be counting nodes, or were they trying to count elements of an array? And I'm really much in favor of keeping things simple. Do not put any smart rules in there, and just have the specifier say what they actually are trying to count.
Yes. We would need to have a look in that array, what's the content, and detect that it's only holding paths. No, you are right. That's not the. In every other case, it should return the length of the array. No, that's not. Okay, forget what I said. So I agree that we really need to have two functions, length and count. Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to cover on this, Carsten? That's two.
Well, I think we are done with what we can do now.
Okay. So it sounds like you've got some more work to do on the document. Okay.
Is anybody else having problems with James' audio?
Yes, it's nearly not to understand.
I'm sorry. I need to get a new space out and sound proofing installed.
James, are you running Windows on a Mac by chance? I've seen this happen
I'm
before.
not. I'm running Mac on a Mac.
Oh.
So maybe you have to switch off your microphone and switch it on again to get a new media channel.
Breaks. I'll try that. Okay.
You may need to disconnect from this and then reconnect.
Well, that's the large hammer, yes.
Yeah, just do that. Just do that now.
We had this issue a lot with a previous job. There's something in the memory management of the audio driver. Like it would miss a packet somewhere and never would be able to recover and just trip over itself consistently. The only way to reset it would be to restart Chrome.
Yeah, the audio effect reminds me of some 1960s sci-fi flicks. So
The UK sci-fi program Doctor Who with the Daleks. You may be
well,
familiar.
we didn't get that in Germany, so we had something called Raumpatrouille, which had some interesting audio effects. Stefan knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, so when you had a light storm, then communication would sometimes degenerate into what we just heard. Hi, James.
Hopefully my speaker looking a bit better now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. It did the speaker itself needed a reboot. Okay. So it sounds like are we finished with 280?
Well, at least with what we can do today about that.
Okay, cool. Sorry, Glenn, what was the other issue that you wanted to go through?
Well, we could go back to the list of issues. I can't see your screen share anymore.
Yep, bear with me a second. I'm slowly getting spun back up. In terms of issues.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were starting to go in circles on 310. So I wondered if it was worth discussing that verbally.
Sure.
I can't remember where we got to actually.
Okay, so in terms of the latest comments.
Maybe you let me argue what kind of problems I do have with. Let's start the use of the term node list. And node list means it's containing nodes. We agree that a node list can be manifested as an array holding the path, the normalized path of the pointing to the values in question. So the first side, a node, should be equivalent to the normalized path pointing to it. So if we read a node is a value along with the location in the argument, so I have a pair of a value and the normalized path pointing to that value. So the normalized path by its own is 100% representation of the node or the value. So if we are talking about nodes, I have in mind, okay, it's a pair of a value and its location, the normalized path pointing to it. So a node list should hold pairs of values and the normalized path, but it does not. A node list only holds the normalized path. It's enough. So this is one of the crack in my head where I don't know how to argue. If someone would ask me, please tell me what exactly is a node in your spec. You must help me.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
cool. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I added a paragraph in one of the other pull requests to try and clarify this, and I described it as nodes are modeled using as a value and a location, and node lists are modeled. So essentially, nodes and node lists are abstractions that we use to model the behavior of JSON path. And then the question is, how are those abstractions represented? So a node list can be represented as an array of normalized paths, but it's more than just an array of normalized paths. It's just a particular representation which actually loses some information. It loses the values, but it's kind of sufficient because you can always take the normalized paths and use them to look up the values in the argument. So a normalized path kind of implies the value in the context of the argument.
I don't understand why a node list in its a representation of an array of normalized paths cannot is not a 100% representation of all the nodes or all the values I want to address. Where is my where?
Well, the representation is that you have to look up the values using the normalized paths. So there's a mapping between the like the concrete array of normalized paths and the node list. And the way the mapping works is that you can take the normalized paths to deduce the locations, and you can apply the normalized paths to the argument to deduce the values. So you can retrieve the abstraction from the representation.
So why do we need some such abstract things like abstract node list and an abstract node, which is not a member or not an element? This is a question where I think it would be much easier to have concrete nodes, as I get if I read an XML documentation. I have.
Yeah. So I think Carsten may be about to speak, but let me continue speaking briefly. I think the points we're making in the issue was that we're aiming here at JSON, so we're looking at JSON values. We're limiting the spec to be able to return JSON values rather than members which are not JSON values, for example.
Yeah, I think the important thing here is to actually make use of abstractions that don't cause us to convert between different representations all the time. So the location is the actual abstraction that we so far have mostly avoided to actually talk about. And the normalized path is a way to represent a location that is useful because you actually could represent that in a JSON structure, because it can be represented in a JSON string. So that's what makes normalized paths useful, but normalized paths are not the concept that we are talking about when we are talking about the location of a node. So let's try to separate concepts and their representations. Now, with respect to the data tree, the usual way trees are talked about in computer science is essentially influenced by graph theory, and it is not usually making much use of the fact that a tree is a very restricted graph. So in a general graph, you really have to separate the edge and the node, or the edge and the vertex, to avoid the word node at the moment. Node is just a synonym for vertex. Because you can have multiple edges leading into a vertex. In a tree, there is only one edge leading into a vertex, and then you have 0 more edges leading out. So you can talk about the edge of a vertex. You can only do that in a tree. You cannot do that in a graph in general. And that, of course, makes it somewhat attractive to actually keep the edge that leads into a vertex together with the vertex, and that's what we call member in the object, and what we haven't been calling by any name yet for arrays, but which Stefan has shown us we could be doing. So that's a very different way to look at that tree. Note that the edges are still not locations in the complete sense, because they are not describing the whole path. They are just describing a single edge. So if we talk about a location, we still have to follow multiple edges. But keeping the edge with the vertex actually can simplify things, and then suddenly things like name of and so on become much more obvious, because well, if you kept the edge with the vertex, then name of vertex is a very well defined thing. So I understand the attractiveness of that. On the other hand, we also try to stay in the JSON data model as much as possible, and possibly beyond where we actually need to stay there. I mean, we obviously need to stay there when we actually return a value from a query. That needs to be representable in JSON. You cannot represent in JSON a vertex with its edge. Actually, if you look into documentation, you often see people trying to do that. So they have a member where they write a string, a colon, and then a value without braces around that. That's not valid JSON, but it's so natural to talk about that people think they are writing JSON if they just give a member name, a colon, and value. So that's a bit of a interesting property of JSON, that we can't really talk about those members or edge vertex combinations in general. And of course, we could rewrite the document to make more extensive use of that combination, and talk about the edge of the vertex, or the edge leading into the vertex, or something like that. Not sure I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that would take us away from our founding document, whatever it was called. I can't remember the name of it. Remit. You know, we're not aware of other JSON path implementations that have a member construct in that way.
Well, we can talk about all the way we want to use. We don't have to emulate the way other implementations talk about their abstract concepts. So we could do that. I'm just not sure that the confusion we generate from that is worth the win of always having the edge with the vertex. And the word you were looking for is charter.
Thank you.
Thank you for your elaborations, Carsten. I will try hard to get into vertices and edges. If you tell it's very unusual to combine an edge and a vertex, which exactly is what a member is, if I understood correctly, and the only node which is a vertex is the value. Okay, but we do not talk about nodes. They are purely the values. So edges in the tree, edges, vertices in the tree should be values, but are not the nodes. Our nodes are the value along with the location from the root. So Glyn is argumenting only that way the nodes are unique, which I understand.
Yeah, we're using location as a proxy for identity. Of course, in German we have two words, dasselbe und das Gleiche. We don't have that in English. The values are can be the same, but the location can be different, which makes the identity different, which makes these different nodes. So that's why it's useful to have the location as a proxy for the identity. That makes it easier to talk about where exactly you are in that tree, and that you can have more than one tree in your document.
But arguing that way, a proxy as an identity should be enough. So we could argue a node is manifested by the proxy, by the normalized path in its concrete presentation. This is where I'm always get round and around.
Yeah, we don't provide a presentation for representation for nodes.
Yes.
We suggest normalized paths as a representation for locations.
This is okay. It's okay.
I think if we brought normalized paths to be the first class location, then we'd have some circularity in the spec, because what is a normalized path? It's applied as a JSON path query to the argument to retrieve a value, and I think that would kind of blow up in our faces slightly.
Yes, I agree. But a node is a value along with its location could be simplified to only the location. Is this correct?
Well, yes, because you can reconstitute the value by looking at the argument and looking up the location in the argument and getting the value from there. But
So
I
we
mean,
don't have a pair of a location and a value to have the node. This is what I have in mind: a pair of a value and its location. But
well,
the
that's
location,
what the node is. I mean, it's a little bit like light, which is a particle and a wave, and depending on how you look at it, it's one or the other. So we have a way to derive a value from a location, and therefore it's sufficient to have the location of a node together with the argument to obtain that value. But the value is usually the part that we are interested in. So it's a bit weird to think about things this way, but it's a valid way of thinking about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially it's a modeling decision that makes it easier to model the selectors and the what the other things are called these days. Oh, good grief. Segment their behavior.
but if I recognize that I have certain difficulties to get the term node right in my mind, I maybe other readers of the spec might have the same. So I'm questioning what can we do better in the spec to get these question marks out of my and other minds.
And that's why I've added a paragraph into the into one of the pull requests on this topic. So there's now a new section at the bottom in the pull request. There's now a new section at the bottom of the terminology section that describes the JSON path value. Sorry, the nodes and the tree.
Yes, I
I don't know if you had a
detected
chance to see that.
this morning, and I need to read it.
Yeah, and it may be that
More careful.
paragraph is somewhere where we can expand upon if there are other kind of improvements we can make in the explanation.
Okay.
I think that discussion has achieved what I wanted by bringing this up, because I think that it's good to chat it through, as it were, talk it through.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any others that you want to discuss in this session?
Yeah, just a quick look into 282. I think we have addressed this. I'm just wondering whether any additional text is needed here.
Yeah, if you scroll down to the bottom, I think I summarized. Oh, no, different one, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we're coming to a consensus there. The 3 thumbs up on the last statement were kind of implying there was agreement, I think. So I think we're ready to close that one, unless I'm mistaken.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Okay.
And maybe capture that in the minutes, James, particularly because then Michael Brooks will see it on the mailing list and can object if he wants to.
Yeah. Okay.
think there is a PR which might be worth taking a quick look at. Yeah, clarify why member names do not have nodes. I think that's okay. That's got an approval now. That's interesting. Yeah, it was a draft PR for a while because it wasn't clear whether we could improve the language in the spec, but I think the PR now does improve it. And I'm particularly pleased with that paragraph that I mentioned because it strips out a lot of the nonsense, if you like, from the definitions of the terms and puts it in a central place where we can discuss the tree and the nodes and the fact that members are not nodes, etc.
Okay.
So I think we're probably ready to merge that one. Good. Stefan's nodding. Great.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I approved it already. I'm just wondering whether we want to have another round actually using the term location.
Okay. Yeah. We can certainly do another PR. Let's merge this
Yes.
one and do the PR.
It's definitely separate from this one.
Okay.
Just could you say just a few words on what you were looking for there?
Well, just make sure that everywhere where we currently use the term normalized path and really mean the location, we use the location, and we obviously then have to define the term.
Yeah. We have defined the term as well.
Oh, good.
Okay. Location is now a defined term. You know, definition might not be great, but it's there. That's all. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. So if we don't want to go through any further issues, just getting a sense of these in terms of timelines. It sounds like we've got a few more things to address. 280 obviously being the big one. One thing I'd be interested about is getting a sense of what sort of timelines we're here with respect to being ready to working group last call the document. Obviously, it's not happening this side of a new year. Would it be too much of a push to have it in a state or near complete state for working group last call by the next IETF meeting, which is in mid-March, if I'm not mistaken?
I was thinking about the Christmas tree. I want to have a working group last call for Christmas.
Okay. Do you genuinely think that's achievable?
Well, I think we need a little bit more time for 280. We can do a few of the editorial things in parallel, but we have 4 weeks to actually do this before Christmas, before the holiday season, I should say. And I think that's doable. It's not a slam dunk, but it's doable.
Okay.
One question: the regex specification we are need in the JSON path spec. Is there something to do, some work to do, because it should be ready before JSON path? Is this critical?
Right, they can both be in the pipeline at the same time, but obviously iRegex is a dependency on JSON path. Both of these documents will likely go through more revisions once both gone off. because we'll get feedback from all of the different reviews and ADs and all the rest of it, all the way up to Auth 48, which is basically the last stop before RFC editor. So I think, yeah, that the dependency isn't in theory a problem here. We can have both submitted off. I think for as long as we ensure that we make it clear that there's that dependency there.
So with this last editing, maybe it's possible to get the issues Greg added at the beginning of the meeting may be addressed too.
Well, we said we wanted to have we wanted to finish the integration of regex in 280, which is, as far as I know, pretty much done, but we should check that. And then by about December 5, we would have a new version of the iRegex document, which would close the working group last call. I mean, formally we are ahead of the base document, so formally there should be no problem at all. And there hasn't been a need to change anything in iRegex, but let's see what we get from the working group last call. And then we really could be thinking about submitting that to the ISG. ISG will probably say, wait a minute, why aren't you giving us the JSON path document at the same time? But we could.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That sounds clear. In terms of a follow-up interim meeting, would it be an idea to post one next month or in January in the new year, noting that the last 2 weeks of December are probably a no-go because people will be celebrating Christmas and New Year and whatnot?
Yeah, January sounds more like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just looking at the calendar, would the week starting the 9th of January be something that people would be available for, or do we need to do it a little bit later?
Works for me.
Works for me. Week 2.
Yeah, week 2. Greg, good for you? Yep, I see the thumbs up. Okay, so it sounds like what we'll do is we'll put in for something then. So it'll most likely, given that we typically do it on a Tuesday, it'll most likely be the 10th of January. But I'll put out my poll as usual in case there's anybody I've missed that is kind of important for this. And I'll ping Tim and make sure that, well, first of all, I'll make sure he's doing well. And Glenn?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, this is the only working group I've been a member of. I haven't been through any other IETF specs. So what should I expect in terms of the sequel after working group last call? Is it kind of all hell breaks loose and we have to rewrite the thing 10 times, or is it fairly smooth typically, or what happens?
It depends on how well we do our work. So part of the working work, of course, is to create a good specification, but the other part is to create a specification that will pass ISG. And of course, I have been trying to keep an eye on that. But in the working group last call, we definitely want to increase our attention to that. And then you never know. I mean, it's not plannable. The whole point about the ISG is that they bring perspectives on this that the working group doesn't have, because it's pretty much focused on the subject matter, while the ISG is a very diverse body. So maybe Warren Kumari has some operational concerns that we haven't addressed yet. I think we have, but he's smarter than I, so he might be bringing up something and so on. So we just have to go into the ISG phase. First of all, we have to make sure that our AD is happy with what we are doing. That's the first part of that phase. And then we have the IETF last call and the ISG ballot. And there we might get some pushback on some detail that we haven't done right, or we might get pushback on something much more fundamental, and we don't know.
Okay, so just playing that back to you, it sounds like we're not going to be anticipating a lot of kind of unwashed developers who coming along and bike shedding on this this internet draft. You know, it's going to be mainly IETF old hands, or people who've been in other working groups in the IESG, whatever that is, and so on.
Sorry, I need to leave a little earlier. If
Okay.
this is okay.
Okay, thank you, Stefan.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not really adding any value now. I'm just trying to understand what's going to happen a bit, get comfortable with it. But I'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, we will have the support of our AD and of document shepherding and the likes. So you're not going to get taken out from a blind side on this and be forced to have to rewrite everything. There's been considerable amount of work put into it, caveating all the things that Carsten raised. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
If there's no other business, then I think we can close this, and I can try to get together what we can, and I'll put something in the calendar for week, and I'll see you all in January.
Okay. In that case, have
Yeah.
a great vacation, have great holidays,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
have great Thanksgiving if any of you is taking part in that ritual.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll see you in the new year.
See you in the new year.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.